Leadership, a simple concept that moves the world, writes history, and drives the lives of millions of people around the world. This is a story that celebrates our leadership and makes us proud of who we are. Today, Latino Leaders Magazine crosses the path of the same leaders we've been interviewing for more than 18 years. Making all of us that work at Latino Leaders Magazine proud of our past and excited about our future. Latino Leaders Magazine is confident that we will continue to inspire the leaders that will write the future pages of our history. We have witnessed the enormous potential and value of Latino leaders. Now, Latino Leaders Magazine wants to continue to serve them by connecting these leaders and thus inspiring the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host and publisher of Latino Leaders Magazine, Mr. Jorge Ferraiz.
Hello, I'm Jorge Ferraiz, President of Latino Leaders Magazine, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the New York Maestro Awards 2023. Tonight, we have a fantastic collection of 4 outstanding leaders. Leaders that have contributed to their community and also have achieved a tremendous success for themselves. Latino Leaders Magazine presents the Maestro Award as the highest recognition every year in 6 different cities. This award is so special for us, and also so special are the companies and organizations that support this effort. I want to thank our sponsors tonight for the New York Maestro Award, Southwest Airlines, Comcast, NBC Universal, and UBS. Also, the support of the New America Alliance, Big Lots, and Únete Mexican Foundation. Tonight, we have 4 outstanding stories of leadership, but also there are human stories that relate and that go to the virtues of the leaders of our community. Thank you again for joining us, and welcome.
At Southwest Airlines, it's always been about heart. It's about loving people, about putting others first. It's about building resilience through connections that last, because distance shouldn't keep us from being neighbors. It's about living responsibly and doing things the Southwest way. We believe the act of connecting can make the world feel a bit smaller and the future a little brighter. And it all starts with heart.
The New York Maestro Award in 2023 is presented to Luis Ubiñas in the category of leadership. A bright mind with a great career. Congratulations.
Jorge, thank you for bringing us together this evening. You and your team connect leaders and inspire others through your publications and events. And to this year's award recipients, congratulations. Tonight, we celebrate you, your service to our communities, and your many accomplishments. I'm Laura Nieto, and I serve as the Managing Director of Corporate Responsibility at Southwest Airlines. At Southwest, we believe in loving people, building resilience, and living responsibly by investing in our diverse partnerships and programs that help accelerate social, environmental, and economic advancement in our communities. Through our longstanding partnership with Latino Leaders Magazine, we've been able to see firsthand how the power of celebrating Latino success stories can inspire the next generation of leaders. Tonight, I'm honored to recognize Mr. Luis Ubiñas, Chair of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. The foundation recently completed construction of the Liberty Museum on Liberty Island, one of the 10 most visited museums in the United States. Mr. Ubiñas is a decorated leader, lending his talents across the private and public sectors, having served as the president of both the Ford Foundation and Pan American Development Foundation, along with his board positions at AT&T and Tanger. And here's a fun fact. Mr. Ubiñas has held top secret national security clearance. He's also a Baker Scholar, being recognized with top honors as a graduate of Harvard Business School. Mr. Ubiñas has published extensively, including articles and opinion pieces in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune magazine, and a range of other publications in the United States and abroad. On behalf of our more than 61,000 Southwest Airlines employees, it is my privilege to present the Maestro Award for Leadership to Mr. Luis Ubiñas. Congratulations.
You know, I was born right here in New York City, not too far from where we are right now, on the Lower East Side. My family came to the United States from Puerto Rico. They were driven out of Puerto Rico because they were building an army base, an Air Force base on the land that they worked. And so they came to the United States with absolutely nothing. And they landed where millions of immigrants have landed, on the Lower East Side of New York, Avenue B. In fact, I recently visited the building where my mother first arrived. And, you know, like all those immigrant stories, they worked through massive difficulties, through incredible poverty, the lack of education most immigrants arrive in the United States with, regardless of where they come from. And through that struggle, we somehow emerged okay. I'm chairman of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. And every time I go to Ellis Island, I'm reminded of the millions of people who are the tens of millions of people who are descendants from those immigrants who passed through Ellis Island. And it makes me think about my grandmother's journey and my mother's journey from Puerto Rico to the United States, from a place where they spoke Spanish to a place where they didn't, from a place where people were all of one religion to a place where they weren't. And it creates a kind of desire to honor their history for me. And the way I honor them is by making sure that I'm doing my best at all times, that no matter how many good things have happened to me, that I aspire to do more good things, that I share that goodness with others. My original life goal was to be, lots of boys and girls dream of being president. I dreamed of being the president's chief of staff. I dreamed of being the president's consigliere. And which is ironic because my son currently works for the president's chief of staff. So completely coincidentally having nothing to do with me. But you know, at the end of the day, I had to pick a practical course. I'd worked at the Wall Street Journal and the Los Angeles Times through college. But when I graduated, my mother was ill. And I just had to make more money in order to be of any assistance to my family. And so I ended up in a career in business. I ended up working at a place called Booz Allen Hamilton. That led to a 25-year career in consulting. I eventually became a senior partner, leading the media practice on the West Coast for McKinsey. And it was a major decision because, unlike lots of people, I wasn't going to pursue the thing that had originally captured me. I was going to pursue something else. I ended up loving that something else. I loved those years at Booz Allen and then at McKinsey. When I arrived at the Ford Foundation, I had that same kind of seminal choice to make. I could be a caretaker CEO and run it as it had been, or I could prepare the organization, as I used to say all the time at the place, to be ready for 2030. And drive the kind of change, lead the kind of change, encourage the kind of change required to make that kind of generational leap forward. And so in that time, we took on vastly more than we probably should have. We reinvested the entire 80% of the endowment and moved its performance into the top quartile. We rethought how strategy was set, moving strategy from a bottoms-up process that led to 250 things being done to an institutional strategy where we did 1/10 as many things, but brought the entire power of the institution to them. Convenings, external support, not just funding, which, by the way, we were able to increase on average by 10x, but all the other things an institution can do in bringing voice to an issue. In that change was great difficulty, and it was hard work. It's a much harder job to lead transformational change than it is to be a caretaker. But my view in every element of my life is that if I'm not making change, if I'm not leaving things substantively better, if I'm not serving the future of the person or the institution I'm engaged with, there's no point in my spending my time doing that thing or being in that relationship. I need to deliver value into situations I'm involved in. Sometimes it drives my wife crazy sometimes. She says, you know, you don't have to work on me at all times. But at the end of the day, I want to make a difference with my years. And whether it's a company or a nonprofit or a philanthropy or someone I care about, I want to leave difference behind. And that doesn't happen by accident. What comes next for me is always organic. What comes next for me is the idea that I should be spending my time making a huge difference. And so right now I'm helping, as chairman of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, think about how to redesign Ellis Island, the exhibitions in Ellis Island, a project that will probably end up costing between $50 and $100 million to make Ellis Island the thing that is on the front of its door, the National Museum of Immigration, so that it tells the story for generations to come, so it stays relevant for generations to come as more of this country becomes Latino or Latina and Asian and Southeast Asian. So that those people, as the ancestors of the European immigrants, can come to Ellis Island and see their history, so that these new immigrants can also see their history at Ellis Island. By the way, the inexorable coming wave of immigration from Africa, the only place in the world effectively left, really, where we can imagine 20 years from now having population growth. We're going to need those people. Those people are going to come. We need to be ready to tell those stories, too. There's a running joke among people who know me that all I do is effectively work. But that really couldn't be further from the truth. I, with my wife, raised two wonderful young men. They're 26 and 28, and we communicate among us almost every day. Because we're in ongoing conversations about a range of things, and rarely a day goes by when that doesn't happen. I have a deep interest in the arts, and I spend an enormous amount of my time collecting, learning about, thinking about art in all its different forms, whether it's performing arts or the visual arts. I love creating things, and my love of having things grow and change means that I've built dozens of gardens at this point, planted thousands and thousands of trees and shrubs and perennials, and you can go and visit any place I've ever lived and notice my gardens. And my friends who come and say, well, obviously you live here because it's got an enormous number of windows and it's surrounded by gardens that are constantly exploding in color. You can't live life, your professional life, with the intensity that my professional life has demanded, and not have personal outlets that are more private. The private relationship that comes from a father and his sons, the private relationship that comes from someone who's building a garden, not for public display, but for himself or herself. You ask an interesting question, how do I want to be remembered? And I'm going to give you what will feel like a completely inadequate answer. I want to be remembered as a great father, someone who raised two terrific young men, and who was an incredible grandfather to their children. If I can be remembered as a great father, I will spend my eternity in happiness.
At UBS, we believe that opportunity presents itself in infinite ways. For everything you hope to accomplish, for your family, legacy, and the next generation, we're here to help. You plan to build a business that enriches your community. We're here to help you see it through. With investment solutions that cover the full spectrum of your needs, advice that reflects your beliefs, traditions, and values, and insights that help you pursue whatever is most meaningful to you. Reaching your dreams on your terms matters. With the right team at your side, the possibilities are endless. Let's build your future together. Invest to advance.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Wagner.
Buenas noches, yo soy Vanessa Wagner.
We're both from UBS Private Wealth Management located in New York City. UBS is the world's largest and only true global wealth manager. Myself, I've always had a passion for the industry and settled with UBS just over 25 years ago, priding ourselves on building long-standing, multi-generational relationships with our clients. This evening, we're just so happy to be partnering with Latino Leaders magazine to introduce to you one of the most influential men in America today.
Tonight, Stephen and I are proud and honored to introduce and present the 2023 Professional Achievement Maestros Award to Mr. Frank Gomez. Frank is a partner at Latin Insights, a strategic communication and research-based firm. As a former senior American diplomat and corporate executive with experience in international and domestic media relations and foreign media planning, Frank has accomplished many accolades throughout his career. He helped found numerous Hispanic organizations, namely the Hispanic National Association of Journalists, the National Association of Hispanic Publications, and the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda. This year, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award by the U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute. Congratulations to you, Frank, for this well-deserved Maestros Award. A Jorge Ferraiz y a Latino Leaders Magazine, muchísimas gracias por facilitar esta plataforma que continúa dándoles a los líderes latinos inspiración y reconocimiento.
The category of Professional Achievement for the New York Maestro Award 2023 is being presented to Frank Gomez, an outstanding professional with a passionate focus for helping others. Congratulations.
Well, it's an unusual story, I think, for many Latinos. I'm very different. My mother was French-Canadian. My father was Mexican-American, born in the U.S., but spent part of his youth in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. My dad and his brother lived in Mexico, and then after his father died and after the war was over, they came back to the States and became migrant workers. The mother and two brothers and two sons. And eventually made it to South Dakota, where they met my mother, and that's where I was born, South Dakota. But I grew up in Washington State, and I was the only Latino in a high school with 1,000 students, just to give you an idea. A lot of people make assumptions about each other, and you can assume that I grew up as a Chicano or in a community with lots of Latinos, and it wasn't the case at all. When I was graduated from school, I thought I was going to be a teacher, but Guatemala taught me a lot. Taught me that we knew very little about the rest of the world, and the rest of the world knew a lot about us. So I resolved to try to do something to change that situation. So I joined the United States Information Agency, and I became a public affairs officer, cultural affairs officer, to help tell the American story to other people and at the same time learn from them. So my first job was in Colombia, where I met my wife. My son was born in Colombia. And then Costa Rica, where my daughter was born. And then we went to Washington, and well, that's a long story. That's another career. Well, I retired from the Foreign Service in 1984. And I decided to do some consulting, and I did. I got some clients in Japan and France and Latin America, Indonesia, and I was enjoying myself. But a friend of mine who worked in personnel at the White House, had worked in the White House, And when I was Chief of Foreign Service Personnel, I knew him because I assigned people for fellowships in the federal government, including in the White House. And he called me and said, "Frank, can you come by? I want to talk to you about a job." And I said, "Sure, well, just tell me what kind of person you're looking for." He said, "I'm looking for you." And I got a job. The job was at Philip Morris Companies in New York City. And that was in 1988. So I went to New York 1988 and joined Philip Morris Companies just at the time that they were acquiring Kraft Foods. They had already owned General Foods and Miller Brewing Company, and that was a completely different situation for me. I'd never been in the private sector other than odd jobs, as we do when we're young. And it opened my eyes to another world, the corporate world. And the best thing about that job was that it gave me resources, time, and responsibility to reach out and build relationships. And that was what gave me the opportunity to meet so many Latinos around the country. Well, I retired from Educational Testing Service in 2018 and continued working. I had always been working with Latin Insights. Even when I was working full-time, Marcel and I worked on various projects. We had a lot of major corporate nonprofit clients, and that was very rewarding work. So I continued to do that with Latin Insights. But at the same time, I developed, improved my knowledge of resume optimization, because I had had a job in the federal government, living abroad, job in the corporate world, job in a gigantic worldwide nonprofit, ETS. So I'd made those transitions, and it was sort of a rare experience for someone. A lot of people, especially when I was young, men in particular, worked 30 years in a company, one company, and retired. And that's less the case today. So I had been helping a lot of young people, especially with their resumes. And there's a big knowledge gap in resume writing. People go online and they find what a format, say, for a resume, and they get bum advice. And I figured a way to do it, and that's what I've been helping people with. Well, just recently, just a matter of a couple of months ago, I decided to formalize my experience and create a service in a more direct and aggressive way. So I'm just beginning that little venture now. I have time in my hands. I still do consulting, of course, but I'm starting to do more helping young people, especially young people. I help some corporate executives that seek my advice too. And that's a very rewarding thing when you help someone either transition from one job to another, identifying their transferable skills, for example, or when you help someone just out of college or maybe early in their career to find the right place for them and be successful. I find it very rewarding. But I attribute my success, I think, more than anything else to my parents. They were not well educated. They didn't finish grade school. But that doesn't mean that they were not smart. They were very smart and very educated, let's say, in the streets. And they taught me a lot about self-reliance, about about hard work. My dad especially, hard work. There were times, for example, he was a welder. He worked on Liberty ships at the Kaiser shipyards on the Columbia River during World War II. And my mother worked for the National Biscuit Company in Portland from time to time when she wasn't raising 6 children. But they invested in real estate. They bought houses. My dad tried little companies, little things here and there, but always interested in progressing and growing. And they were very successful at what they did. They raised 6 children, all successful in one way or another, very different, all of them. but I have to attribute my attitude toward hard work to them. I've thought about writing. In fact, just yesterday I began a document on my computer, and it's entitled Becoming Latino. Because I wasn't born a Latino, I became one through my experience. And I think that's a very rare experience. So I might write, probably not a book, maybe some essays. I want to continue to help other people, share. I don't need to travel. I've traveled enough. Thank you very much. And see my grandchildren, my granddaughters grow up and become successful.
I would like to congratulate Big Lots board member Sandra Campos on receiving the Maestro of Entrepreneurship Award. At Big Lots, our vision is to be the big difference for a better life for our customers, our associates, our vendor partners, our investors, and the communities we serve. And we are grateful for Sandra's contributions to help bring that vision to life. Throughout her career, whether it be as a board member, CEO, advisor, or entrepreneur, her work has made a significant difference within the Latino community and inspired a new generation of Latino entrepreneurs. Sandra, on behalf of our nearly 35,000 associates, we are so proud of your impact on Big Lots and Latino communities everywhere. Thank you and congratulations.
The Maestro Award in New York 2023 in the category of entrepreneurship is presented to Sandra Campos, an admirable woman with a great leadership story. Congratulations.
I am first generation, so both of my parents immigrated to the U.S. My father was 14 when he came here. My mother was 18, and they both moved to California, which is where my father had some relatives. And so when they went to L.A., they had 3 kids in L.A., went back to Mexico City, which is where my mother's from, my mother's family, and they actually grew up down the street from each other. So they had 6 kids, and ultimately, with their 6 of us, I'm the second, and born in Hollywood, California. Moved to Mexico City for several years, then went back and moved into El Paso. We moved to El Paso because my father wanted to learn the tortilla factory business. And so we went and moved in with an uncle, Senor Valdez, and all of his family, which he had 10 kids. And you know, as Latinos, when we do everything for family, you know, and it's really one of the most important grounding values. And so we moved in with them so he could learn the tortilla business. And then we moved into our own house, and he kept working that tortilla business in El Paso for 3 years. And then we moved to Grand Prairie, Texas, between Dallas and Fort Worth, and he started his own tortilla factory. My mother recently moved out of her house, and my sister found my old diary when I was 10 years old. And when I read the diary, it made me realize I had been working at that factory for at least 2 years before I was 10 because I was working machines that were quite sophisticated at that point in time. So it was just funny. I read that and I just started remembering, oh yeah, I was excited to go to work. So the values of hard work, the values of understanding, you know, I was working in the back of the warehouse packing up boxes. I was counting tortillas, eating them, counting, putting them in the bags and packaging them up. So really all of the manufacturing process that they were involved in, from the recipe all the way through the end when the trucks came to pick them up for the grocery stores that they were selling to in the restaurants, that entire process I was going through. I didn't appreciate it at the time. I don't think any of us did because we were having to work and we wanted to be playing. But now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was always there. You know, I always had a bit of that knowledge and certainly the entrepreneurial spirit. My mother was very good about letting me experiment. So I loved going to the fabric store, and she had a sewing machine. And so she was my parents had also, they came to the United States as Catholics, but then they actually converted to Mormonism. So I was raised as a Mormon. Latina, Texas, Mormon, there weren't a lot of us. So with that, she had a lot of quilting and other types of crafts around the house. And that was just a big part of what the women were doing in the church. And so I started experimenting with pillows and curtains, and she just let me do whatever creative thing I wanted to do for our house. And so I started then making clothes for my siblings, and I started doing and making clothes for my friends, and I started making clothes for myself. And so during college, I was making things that I would sell to people. And so I just realized that there was something creatively that I could express, and it could be in a form of business. So when you look at the industry of fashion or retail, it's like New York or LA. And I sent one resume to New York, one resume to LA. I knew LA because I had a lot of family there, and I wasn't particularly interested in moving to LA, but I knew no one in New York. I was very young. I was literally barely 20-year-old moving to the city, having a Southern drawl, very thick Southern drawl, and having a boss from Brooklyn. So my first boss's name was Arthur Least, and Arthur couldn't understand Sandra from Texas, and so he would sit next to me, and literally he said, "I can't understand you." So he made me sit next to him in his office for 1 year, and he would always say to me, "Enunciate your words, enunciate your words." So he really tried to shape me into understanding that in New York things were different, and so I quickly had to kind of adapt. But after that year, I no longer had a Southern drawl, I no longer was Sandra, and I no longer thought that I moved here thinking maybe I'll be a year, maybe I'll be here 3 years. And then I no longer thought that after a year. I knew this was my place, this was my home. Fashion Launchpad and the business that I started was really during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, I was the CEO of Diane von Furstenberg, which was a global brand. We had 68 stores we had to shut down our European operations, had to close and let go of 75% of the employees. Everything changed. You know, we were selling $500 to $1,000 dresses, and while we were all sitting in quarantine wearing pajamas. So nobody cared about that type of product. And I realized then, as I was getting phone calls, mainly from women, but I was getting a lot of calls. My husband lost their job. I need to get back in the workplace. I've been really focused on wholesale. How do I understand more about the digital economy? And the more of those that I got, the more I realized that we have done a really poor job in retail and fashion in particular, and CPG's done a little bit of a better job, but of learning and development. So that learning and development, to be able to upskill and to reskill, is so important. And I've pushed myself to do it, but others who haven't had opportunities presented to them. It's either the budgets were cut back, because we used to do this in the industry 20 plus years ago, but they haven't really, a lot of the companies don't really do a lot with it. But I realized there was an opportunity to help others learn and help them learn across function, so that not only they could be better at their own jobs, but also better at understanding a company in totality, which then creates a better culture, creates hopefully a more profitable business as well, because you have people and team that are aligned. And the alignment factor, when you talk to CEOs out there, what's the most important part of what you need to build in a culture? It's alignment. You need to have a strategy and your goal and your vision that your entire team, all the way down to the bottom, from the top, they understand, they know. You need to repeat it as often as possible. But you need to give also, now with this new generation that's in the workforce, they want a roadmap. They want to know how they're going to get there. They want a promotion in a year. They want to know how they're going to get there. So giving these opportunities to have courses that they hear from existing C-suite executives, founders, entrepreneurs that are doing it, have done it, that are giving them tactical takeaways, that's what this Launchpad is. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is having confidence to be in a boardroom, to have a voice, to be able to go to your boss to talk about a promotion, to be able to go to a mentor and say, how can you help me? How can I learn from you? Those are all things that you need to have confidence in yourself, and also confidence in what you're looking towards in the future, so that you can get there. And I think, that's what Launchpad and these series will do. If you asked my children what my hobbies are, they say business, because she loves business, and I do. I love business. I love everything about business. So I think about businesses. I think about what could be a great business. So that's all encompassing for me 24/7. In terms of what I do, I bought a horse farm. I bought a farm. I'll start there. I bought a farm 4.5 years ago, and that farm is 45 acres in upstate New York that I wanted to bring horses to. From the time that I was 2, which I have pictures of, which reminded me recently, I was riding the donkeys, riding the horses, and they were all about the animals. growing up in Texas, it's the cowboy, it's the horses. I had that always. We had a horse down the street. You know, it wasn't ours. We didn't have enough money for it, but we had enough of a connection. So I always knew I wanted it. So when I was raising my kids in the city, when we'd go on vacations, I was always like, we're going to go and take a trail ride. We're going to go to the horses. I would send them to pony camp on the summers and just make sure that they had a connection to horses. And so as I started learning more when I bought this property, I started learning more about horses, and the 85,000 of them are sent to slaughter every year. So I started rescuing a few, and now I have 8. It's not rescuing, thousands, but I'm rescuing 8, and I'm giving them a sanctuary. They're amazing creatures. I love them as much as I love children. But they're really amazing creatures, and that's a big part of what I do, and that's where I spend a lot of my free time, as I want to be there and I want to spend time with the animals and nature. And so it's something that I didn't realize I was going to want. I used to love to go to the beach, and now I love to go up to the farm. I heard a quote from another Latina whose name is Carla Gallardo, and she gave me this quote, which I've been repeating, which is basically, coaches talk to you, mentors talk with you, but sponsors talk about you. And my hope is that I can be a sponsor. I can be all 3, but I can be more of a sponsor, talking about other Latinas and Latinos to be able to help uplift them, talking about them when they're not in the room so that I can help give them either positions, opportunities, board roles, whatever that is. And that's what I do. I spend a lot of my time, my extra time, trying to do that and have the discussions, and organizations such as yours that are highlighting and featuring people are inspiring for others to be able to work towards, but also the LCDA that does a great job of trying to make sure that we are represented on boards in public companies and private companies as well. So I hope to be able to be remembered as somebody who was making a difference by helping others through that expression of giving back of what I've learned, that knowledge, and sponsoring others through helping them with their next moves.
This is the story of Juan and Sara. Although they are in neighboring countries, the first steps towards their education will start the same. Even if their dreams may seem similar, the journey to make them a reality will be different. Most schools in marginalized communities in Mexico do not have technological equipment so that students can develop their full potential. Through private and public partnerships and with the help of their donors, Únete has been installing media classrooms in public schools in Mexico for over 24 years. Almost 10,000 schools have been equipped to date, but there's still much to do.
Hello friends, I'm Alejandra Garza, Ambassador of Únete Mexican Foundation. Today, I am inviting you to support Únete Mexican Foundation. With your donation, students in Mexico will be able to have a better education for their future and the future of their communities. The school that will appear on your screen is located in Mexico, in a highly vulnerable area. We want to ask you to take out your mobile devices and click on the QR code so that this school can be equipped by Únete Mexican Foundation. Please click to donate any amount that you can so we can help them make their dreams come true. Mi casa es tu casa. Their school is our school. Their education is everyone's responsibility.
The Maestro Award in New York 2023 in the category of Community Service is presented to Jaime Lucero, a man with a passion for giving back. Congratulations.
Hi, my name is Jaime Lucero. I was born in Puebla, Mexico in 1957. I'm part of 7 brothers and sisters. I'm the 4th of them. My mother and father used to be farmers in When I was 6 years old, my father passed away, so my mother had to deal with all these 7 children. So it was very tough times for us. When I was 9 years old, I was forced to go to work to Mexico City. In my small town, it was only up to 3rd grade of elementary school. So when I got to the big city, Mexico City, I started in 4th grade up to 9th grade. And by that time, I was 18 years old. So I came to the U.S. And here it was a new beginning. In the U.S. that was the next step in my life. My first work was at the restaurant in Queens, and I was working there. I was a dishwasher. Eventually, I got some promotions, and after 6 years, I was the manager in the kitchen. And I have a very good life, you know. It was good money. It was the respect of the other people, my colleagues, my boss, and I was feeling good. You know, I was thinking that I will stay for longer, but always when I was by myself and at night thinking, you start asking yourself if you did all that to get to New York to be in a restaurant. So I decided to buy the truck that I was using. That is, it was an old truck, and it wasn't in good condition. So I asked my boss to sell it to me, and he did agree. I told him I train everybody in the kitchen and the restaurant. What I do is taking care of for somebody else. So give me the opportunity to go and see what else is there. I did learn that we have to take chances, you know. I did learn that you feel comfortable, you're going to stay there. So sometimes I didn't have money to eat or for gasoline or to pay the tolls on that truck. So, but that gave me the opportunity to learn how to get around all this, you know. And going back to the restaurant, I used to really hate that work, you know, the dishwashing. And I was ready to quit and look for something else, you know, easier. But came to the same thinking. I didn't come here to get things easy. I have to get strong, and whatever I do, I have to get strong. And that's I apply all that to all aspects of my life. You know, you have to pay a price, and you have to learn how to get around, to overcome the difficulties. I was 21 years old. We formed what is now Casa Puebla, New York. In as I say, there was no money. You just have people that works for somebody else. But if you talk to them, you sell them the idea that they can be better, they will do it. And up to today, I'm amazed myself how we got to convince ourselves to build. We took an old building in Queens and remodeled it. And it was like a palace for us because that was our first club. We used to call them a club. And we used to have English classes for us. We have teachers to to help us to go through this. So I always been involved. That was my main out of my business, that my main how you call the activities, yeah, interest. And since then, you know, I always have area in the community development, especially the Mexican community. Later on, we are with the Latin community, but since then we've been with this purpose. And lately we have this project. Casa Puebla still is in operation after 40-something years, but 4 years ago we decided to go for the big game. You know, there's a movement called Fuerza Migrante. This binational, now it's multinational movement to try to integrate all the Mexicans, Latin Americans to work together and try to overcome all the different problems that our community experience. So it's been it's been a real challenge, you know. It's a real challenge to put all this together and demonstrate that we can do it. So we've been working very hard. So it's a big group of people in more than 2 countries, getting all this together. And I'm very proud of all my people who've been with working together in this big project. And that shows that we can accomplish anything if we do it right. So that's a new Fuerza Migrante, you know, that we have to keep getting allies that can move all this movement. I take the opportunity to tell I have 3 sons and a daughter, that I love you very much, and sometimes what I do, it takes a lot of time that it was supposed to go to you, but I always love you, and thank you for being patient with me.
This has been the New York Maestro Awards of 2023. We in Latino Leaders are so proud and happy to be able to congratulate and to recognize these outstanding leaders. I want to thank the support and partnership of Southwest Airlines, Comcast NBC Universal, and also UBS, Steve and Vanessa Wagner. Also, the support of organizations like Big Lots, the New America Alliance, and UNETE, Mexican Foundation. Thank you to all of them for their support. And congratulations to all our awardees again. On behalf of Latino Leaders and all my team, we're proud and honored to present this recognition to you. Good night.